awesome, you guys. I know there were lots of stories about really fun times you've had, just experiences that have brought you great joy. You know, the Bible talks a lot about the joy you can have living for Jesus. So right now, let's get our Bible breakdown with Gavin.
When I was younger, one of my favorite video games of all time was a game you may have heard of called Rock Band. Now, it's not as popular now, but back then, everyone had that game. And what made this game so fun to play was that it made you feel like you were actually part of a real rock band. You had a guitar, a microphone, and even a drum set. And you would play along with what you see on the screen to actual songs. Also, I just love music, so that game made me so happy every time I played it. Some days I still wish I were in a real rock band. Well, I'm sure there are some video games that make you just as happy, where you could play for hours and hours and never get bored. Some of you are thinking of your favorite video game right now and how much you love playing those games. But maybe you've experienced this before, where when you stop playing those games, after a few hours, you weren't as happy as you were when you were playing them. It's like you got a jolt of happiness, but then back to normal life almost immediately. Well, that's because happiness is only a temporary feeling. It goes away so quickly. But joy is different. Joy isn't temporary. And kind of like how you unlock power-ups in video games, Jesus gives us a way to unlock one of his power-ups, the power of joy. No one understood the power of joy better than Paul in the Bible. Back in the day, Paul was one of the main leaders of the early church when it was first getting started. He even wrote almost half of the New Testament section of your Bible. This guy was legit and knew his stuff. One of the things that he wrote in your Bible is the book of Philippians. This is a letter Paul wrote to the people in the city of Philippi where he helped start a church. This whole letter, Paul talks about what it means to live a life full of joy no matter what. Here's the crazy thing though. Paul wrote this letter while he was in prison. Yeah, you heard me right, prison. He was spreading the news of Jesus all over the place, but some people didn't like that too well. He was beaten and thrown in prison. Man. Yet the Bible tells us that while he was in prison, him and his buddy, who was also in prison with him, were singing hymns and praying to God. What? There were other prisoners there too. They must have been losing their minds. How in the world are these two goofballs singing and praising to God when they are stuck here in prison? But they had unlocked the power of joy. This whole letter that Paul writes to the Philippians talks about him having so much joy and that being in prison was actually helping him spread the news about Jesus. Wow! I don't know about you, but if I were in prison, I probably wouldn't be all that happy. But Paul may not have been happy either. But even while he was in prison, he had the power of joy because he knew that Jesus was with him, even in prison. Paul says this in Philippians, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice." Paul tells them to rejoice. He says to always rejoice. There's no way you could always feel happy, but you can always have joy when you unlock that power. I always got so happy playing Rock Band, but it went away so quickly. This joy is here to stay. When we spend time with Jesus, like reading our Bibles or coming to church every weekend or praying, he gives us this joy. And that joy can be used for anything. No matter what awful circumstance you're in or when things don't seem to be going your way, Jesus is with you. And when you unlock his power of joy, you can know and trust that things are going to be okay. His joy will get you through it. Paul unlocked the power of joy, and so can we. So when you know Jesus, you can unlock his power.
All right, guys, that was awesome. We're going to talk more about this in our groups right now. So have a great week. And remember, when you know Jesus, you can unlock his power.